What is up, you It's boy Millsy? Back hometown commander. Back for another episode of Millsy Brews. Show where my brew my version 1.0 deck list with the commander in front of us on my quest out brew the magic world. And as always, the deck list is down in the description below. We are rocking our way through TJ content. And I'm really excited to finally get to this deck because this is a commander I hadn't really once thought about until I started playing this in against us in Brawl, and I started to realize, I think, how good this guy can actually be in Commander, and so I definitely want to talk about it today. Today we're talking about Laughing Jasper Flint, a Rakdos rogue 4/3 Commander. Says creatures you control but don't own are mercenaries in addition to their other types. That line of text, that type should stick out to you because it's second ability. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top X cards of target opponent's library, where X is the number of outlaws you control. Until end of turn, you may cast spells from among those cards, and mana of any type can be spent to cast those spells. So Flint does something really cool. It allows us to take our opponent's things, but also turns them into mercenaries if we play their creatures, meaning they turn into outlaws. And I think when I dealt with Rakdos was a really cool sacrifice play your opponent's things decks. We did on the channel a few weeks ago. But what I like about Laughing Jasper Flint is this is like more of an Outlaws deck that takes your opponent's things. And I think that's an important difference because we really want to take advantage of specifically what we're playing that makes Outlaws and what Outlaws specifically we're playing. So we're going to talk about that. We're talking about how we can steal and even committing crimes by extension, and then just a couple stealing payoffs for it. But let's talk about our outlaws, because the outlaws matter, right? At the end of the day, the number of outlaws that we have are important, and so we want to talk about the things that are going to give us more outlaws, increase that count, more cards for our opponents. A Cool the Unrepentant just seems like a great idea. 5 mana, 4/4 flying trample. It is a rogue, so it is an outlaw, and we could sack 3 other creatures, put a creature from our hand on the battlefield. We could do this by sacrificing tokens, or maybe our opponent's things we got from them. Butch Deloria, Tunnel Snake, is a rogue, so it is an outlaw. Whenever it attacks, gets +1/+1 for each rogue or snake you control, and then for 2 mana we can put a menace counter on another creature and it becomes a rogue, so we can turn our potentially non-outlaw creatures into rogues. But remember, so honest, most of our deck's actually rogues, so we kind of tried to play into that kindred to really take advantage of it, but even for the ones that aren't, Butch can turn them into that. Gisa just seems like an absolute slam dunk. Whenever we commit a crime, we make 2 tap zombie rogue creature tokens. Remember that Flint's ability will commit a crime, so we're almost always going to get it. We're always going to get that. And then they are rogues, so they are outlaws, meaning they're going to add to that count for Flint. And I think this was where Gisa becomes a really good slam dunk. She's a warlock, so she is a outlaw, and she makes more outlaws. And then those zombies, like we talked about when we brewed her, will become important in themselves. Greywater's Fixer is probably not the most splashy of outlaws in the world, but it gives each outlaw card in our graveyard Encore X, where X is its mana value. And that's perfect because we could potentially get things back at the right time if need be. Grim Hireling gives us treasures when one or more creatures we control deal damage to a player and a little bit of removal. Being a rogue, of course, it is an outlaw. Hellspur Posse Boss gives all of our other outlaws haste. This is fun with Flint because when Flint brings those creatures we don't control in, they're then mercenaries and they have haste. And when ETBs, we get 2 mercenary creature tokens. Karavek, being a warlock, of course, outlaw, and can get our black things back from our graveyard. Massacre Girl, being an assassin, is an outlaw and a great one at that, giving all of our creatures wither and the potential to draw some card. Rankle, a card I absolutely love, as a rogue, so it is an outlaw. Deals damage to a player. We choose any number. Each player discards a card. Each player loses a life and draws a card, and each player sacks a creature. Again, we can use whatever we think's best and get them in the moment. Well, the only creature in our deck that isn't an outlaw really printed on the card is Roaming Throne, but it's because it comes down and picks Rogue and just doubles up most of our deck. Again, Flint's Trigger is a triggered ability, so it's going to go off. And we have so many other rogues in the deck that are just going to be great to double up, and Roaming Throne is a great card for that. I kind of hate Roaming Throne at the same time because it's become a slam dunk in a lot of Kindred tribal decks, but hey, it is what it is. Vadmir seems like a ton of fun. Whenever you commit a crime, you put a counter on it. Once it gets 4 more counters, menace and lifelink, Vadmir can become a big threat for sure. And I like the idea of having one of them around. And then Varagoth seems pretty cool, giving us a little bit of a tutor on it when it attacks. And it having Death Touch means it's going to be pretty tough for people to want to block into it if they can't do it profitably. But okay, well, we talked about Outlaws. Let's talk about stealing. And in fact, we do a ton of stealing effects on Outlaws. Gonti, Lord of Luxury comes in, look at top 4 of opponent's library. Exile one of them, we could play it. Grenzo, Havoc Raiser. Whenever a creature we control deals damage to a player, we most time want to do the second one, which is exile the top card of that player's library. We can play that card, until end of turn. Mari, the Killing Quill, is a great ability for a creature we control. Opponent controls dies, you exile with a hit counter on it, and then whenever a creature does combat damage to a player, remove a hit counter from a card that player owns in exile. And if you do, draw a card and make and create 2 treasures. Just a fun ability that gives a lot of our Outlaws death touch, and then this ability meaning we can be getting profitability back from killing our opponent's creatures and getting them into exile with those hit counters on them. Rakdos, the muscle that we talked about in the beginning, is in the deck, of course. A 5-mana 6/5 that is a mercenary, so it is an Outlaw. Great ability, can protect itself with giving it itself indestructible, can sacrifice creatures to take cards off the top of people's libraries and play them. I think Rakdos is a great commander in its own right, but I like how it can support Flint here in this deck. Heartless Conscription seems like a fun board wipe. Exile all creatures. For each card exiled this way, you may play that card for as long as it remains exiled, and mana of any type can be spent to cast it. Love it, and this is a board wipe we want, because then we can bring all of them back as mercenaries right alongside Flint. Predator's Hour, same thing. Each creature we control gets menace, and whenever it hits, exile the top card of that player's library face down. We can look at it and play it. Love it, and if we can hit the right players, we can really take advantage of it. The thing I like about Predator's Hour is every one of them has that ability. It's not just whenever one or more hits, every single one of them gets it, so we're going to take good advantage of it. Dream Thief's Bandana, whenever a creature does damage to a player, look at the top card of their library, exile it face down, we can play. Court of Lochthwain, beginning your upkeep, exile the top card of target opponent's library. You could play that card for as long as it remains exiled, but if you're the Monarch, you can play any, cast a spell from among them without paying its mana cost, so a pretty good reason to want to keep the Monarch and stick with it. Ruinous Power, so at the beginning of our upkeep, we choose an opponent at random, exile the top card of that player's library, and we can play that card. But when we do, its owners lose life equal to its mana value, which is pretty cool, and will help us, steal those things and get that value back. Locan. Most of the ways we're going to steal cards means we're going to cast them from exile, and it was going to be very hard to get around these 3 cards. I think these 3 cards you're going to see a slam dunk in probably every Flint list you look at. In fact, you're going to see these 2 +1 cards in every single Prosper deck you look at, which is on the left. I love Prosper as a commander. I think Prosper is probably a absolute signpost for what Rakdos value looks like. But Prosper is a slam dunk in this deck. 1, it's an Outlaw. 2, as we're stealing these things, we're getting treasures. It's just a house of value. And I think Flint might be a fun way to play Prosper and not have it be the first thing everybody sees when they sit down. Wild Magic Sorcerer, giving our first spell we cast each turn from exile. Cascade, great, awesome. That'll again get us another spell from exile we cast, but again, great value. And then Passionate Archaeologist, just dealing out damage when we cast things from exile. Again, help us start ping our opponents down. This wasn't on the roadmap at the front, but I want to talk about the fact that I think this deck gets supported by some commons and uncommons in the set that are really good. It's very rare you see a commander deck get really good supported uncommon, and I think there's 4 or 5 really good Outlaw cards at uncommon. At Knife Point, gives you first strike on all of your Outlaws, and then whenever you commit a crime, you get a mercenary, and because Flint's committing a crime every turn, this is 3 mana of literally 2 perfect lines. Brimstone Roundup, whenever we cast our second spell each turn, we get a mercenary. We're going to be doing this probably fairly often, especially once we get more mana. Great. More Outlaws, more cards off the top. Rakish Crew gets us an Outlaw when it comes in. Whatever an Outlaw we control dies, each opponent loses life and we gain a life. What the part I like about Rakish Crew is all of our tokens will trigger this, but all those creatures we took are mercenaries, meaning they're going to trigger this when they die. I think these 3 cards are just a great example of where the value from this deck can come from. It doesn't have to be a $10 or $15 rare like Gisa Gisa or Prosper or Rakdos. You can get good value from literally 40-cent, 30-cent, 20-cent cards in this deck. In fact, I think at Knife Point might be one of the better cards in this deck, just straight up, because of the fact that both of its lines of text help this deck so much. And I mean, we're going to be committing crimes all the time in this deck, and I think getting the mercenaries that way is going to be really beneficial. But I've said it before on this show, and I'll say it again. No deck's ever complete. This is just my version 1.0 of the deck, and these are the 3 cards that I really wanted to add, but just had to cut due to some reasons. Breach the Multiverse makes a ton of sense. Each player mills 10. For each player, choose a creature or planeswalker and put them on the battlefield under our control. Seems great. They come in as mercenaries, the ones we take from our opponents, and Bridge could be a great finisher. I really love the look of Outrageous Robbery, but I think we have enough steal effects in the deck, and it feels odd, but it's just the case. I had to cut a steal effect somewhere, and Outrageous was the one I chose to cut, but I think it could just as easily come back in. And then I like Ensnared by the Mara. It's a card I really like because it gives your opponent a choice. They exile from the top till they hit a non-land card, and we get to play it for free, or they exile the top 4 and we deal damage equal to the total mana value to that player. This can be very hit and miss depending on the players you're playing against, but hey, if we hit creatures, they're mercenaries and they start for our count. I like it. I think it's worth it, but it just wasn't worth it over some other cards we had. Well, let's get to our playtest. 4 lands and a Prosper feels like pretty much damn on what we want to do. Turn 1, Swamp down here. I think this just gets us into a turn 2 Mountain and that Vadmir. Might as well get it going. Flint comes down on turn 3, right? And we don't, of course, don't get Flint's ability this turn, but that's certainly okay. Vadmir might be able to take a shot at somebody if not. Absolutely no worries at all. We start turn 4, we just pick somebody for 2, as long as nobody dealt with Flint. Vadmir goes off, getting in a counter, because we just committed a crime, which is great. Vadmir's now 1 step closer to that. We put that Swamp down and get Prosper down. We can take a shot with Flint if we want to. We can take a shot with Vadmir here on turn 4 if we have the attacks. If not, I'm not desperately worried about it. Yes, I just lost the 2 cards I took off the top. Maybe there's a world where one of those cards is better, but I want to kind of try to, without just saying, well, I can't playtest the deck because I don't know what we're going to hit. I want to try to create a way to do it. If there's something better than Prosper for 4 mana, I'm going to do it. But otherwise, I think Prosper's a literal slam dunk in this deck. End of turn, we flip a Roaming Throne, which I think is near perfect. This turn, we have 3 Outlaws, nuke somebody for 3 cards on that. Vadmir gets another counter. And again, when I play the Swan, I doubt anybody's we're going to reveal 3 cards here that are better than this Roaming Throne. We play it and get the treasure. Does that treasure come in tapped? It does not. We now have 2 mana left. We pick Rogue. Now, Vadmir's going to go off. It would go off double. Remember, it only triggers once per turn, but that's okay. Flint's now going to go off twice. Now we just basically have to protect Flint, which is not going to be very hard. But for 2 mana, I can see a couple options. We could put Butch down. Butch is going to become a great attacker next turn, and it also would count as another Outlaw. We could get the Bandana down for next turn if that's what we wanted to do. I think I'd probably just get Butch down, get rid of that treasure. Now this turn, end of turn, we reveal a Captain Lannery Storm. Now, beginning our upkeep, we have 5 Outlaws, meaning we're going to hit somebody for 5, and we can hit another player for 5 or the same player for 5 more. Draw, and now I would be at the point where I'm now starting to determine, am I playing my opponent's things or am I playing mine, right? I have a great board state. Butch, I would probably, if I have the mana, put a counter on Prosper to make it a rogue, just so that way Prosper can go off twice on both of its abilities. Would be a slam dunk to me. And of course we picked Rogue for Roaming Throne, so not that big of a deal. We could also, so that would be 3 mana left over this turn. I mean, if anyone has any good, I think I play it. Otherwise, I probably just slam Lannery Storm, take the treasure, and just go attacking with like Butch and Vadmir now that it has Venice and Lifelink. And again, what we're going to start doing here is just absolutely take advantage of Prosper for value. But Laughing Flint is just going to start taking our opponent's decks, and if we find something better than what we want to play, we play it. Otherwise, we stick to our game plan, keep going wide, keep protecting our board. But let's go into playtest number 2. So we're keeping a 3-lander with a Bedevil, Shoot the Sheriff, fun removal spell that fits our theme, Terminate, and Big Score. A lot of removal. I think that's fine. We can kind of clear the way. Turn 1, I guess we'll Blackcleave Cliffs. Not really much else better we can do. Vial Smasher seems cool on turn 2 here, if we get no better play. Jeez, the Roaming Throne. We'll go with the Vial Smasher there on turn 2. This at least gives us another Outlaw for Flint. We play 1 turn. Turn 3, we see a Jessica's Will. Can't Jessica's Will this turn, at least I wouldn't want to, because we won't have the extra black for Flint. So I'd probably just play Flint here. maybe look to, like Jessica's Will into a roaming throne and maybe something else next turn, depending on what our mana looks like. But Vial Smasher goes off whenever another Outlaw ETBs. It deals 1 damage to target opponent, pick an opponent, and we'll just go, start of our turn, hit somebody for their top 2, draw for turn. We'll put the Jagged Barons in tapped, hit somebody for 1. And 3 mana here, it's kind of awkward. I feel like I want to Jessica's Will just for the roaming throne to get the rogue down, right? That's kind of awkward because we're going to end up wasting a couple mana. But I think that's okay. I mean, 4 mana is well worth. 7 mana off of 7 or 6 mana for Jessica's Will is more than well worth the roaming throne. I believe it would count as a rogue. So I believe Vial Smasher would go off twice. But again, now we're nuking 3 cards off the top of 2 players' libraries at the start of our turn. Now we're up to 4 mana. I could see the idea of leaving up some removal and just playing Vadmir. Again, 2 triggers off of the Vial Smasher. One of them would actually trigger Vadmir here because it would see the crime getting committed. And again, now we don't have a bad board state, kind of similar to our last point where Flint's getting doubled up every turn. And again, going forward, we say, are we playing our own things? Are we playing the things we take from our opponents? Just try to push some advantage and take our opponent's things. Otherwise, we're just holding a grip of removal and we just leave it up. Try to remove our things, get in there for combat, and just try to keep working towards another big, value position. But let me know, what do you think of Flint down in the comment section below? Again, I like the idea of this deck. In fact, I told a couple of people in some text messages this week that I think this might be my tie with Gitrog so far, as maybe the OTGA commander that I might try that I didn't expect to like. I think it looks really interesting. This might be a fun way for you to play Rakdos, but still have some fun in combat. But let me know what you think down in the comment section below, and I will catch you guys next time.